So welcome to another episode of Bing Chat Before Bedtime. So in this episode I am going to task it with suggesting trilogies, album trilogies by bands. It's something I've always been super interested in. I may have even mentioned it in other episodes. I think I probably did Seeds of Flourishing episode on that same thing. And I've always found it an interesting music expansion, music discovery technique. And as we go through, I'm going to just chat a little bit while we're waiting for answers to come back. Now, originally I was going to start off with this. So we're doing a sort of chain of thought experiment with Bing Chat. So I'm going to be asking it following questions in order to I like to use the term soften it up, where we get to a point where we're going to ask the question where I get it to choose a music genre at random and then list some trilogies by bands or artists in that chosen genre. But I was going to start it off originally with this. So assume the role of an expert musicologist who specialises in music genres. What do you understand by the term trilogy when applied to a band or artist album? And then I was going to ask it some follow-up questions. Things I've started doing with chain of thought experiments is adding in questions which act as a little bit of quality control. And now in the process of doing that, because as I've explained before, I run through these sort of ideas in the evening before bedtime, but I might do it over multiple evenings or even follow up in the morning, and certainly follow up before I do the video as well. And in me dabbling, I decided I was going to start off with this as my starting prompt and then move on to the one I've just shown you. So I'm going to just ask it to summarise an article on band trilogies before we do anything. And I wanted to show you a bit of a problem here. Now, before we do that, let me show you the website I'm asking it to reference. So it's this one. It's an article I've read before. I'm not even sure if I showed it on screen when I did my Seeds of Flourishing video on trilogies. But here it is. I'm just scrolling through it so you can see what's on here, because we're going to be quality controlling the answer. Now, by way of a sort of I'm trying to think of the best word for this, partially excuse Bing for any oversights or problems it's going to have with this task. I'll just show you something that I noticed. If I open Discovery for the page, it's not interacting with it. And you remember I said in a previous video where I was exploring this feature, I've noticed that as a thing. Some web pages, for whatever reason, I'm not sure what Bing is doing in the background as to whether some pages are just off limits because of the way they're rendered, or the way they're constructed, the way they're marked up. Who knows? But you can see the chat interface is not working at all here, and it's not doing that trick, if you highlight it, giving you the option to bring it across. The insights is working. And this is this used to also be useful for just checking I never know whether the correct term is provenance or providence. Provenance, I think it is. The provenance of a website. So you get a bit of analytics about the site as well, which is useful. So we are getting some stuff, but we're not getting what I would expect. So just as a starting point. So we're going to send this through and see what it does. And I have sort of mentioned this happening before under different circumstances, when I think the other day I said, beware of passing papers this way, because things start to go wrong. Paper review seems to work better if you use the Discover over here. Strokey beard time. Okay, so why was it? See, it's done it again, I think. I don't remember what's Husker do there? It's a bit more Husker don't than Husker do, I think. Yeah, I don't see it. Unless there's was there another page here once? Is it looking at a cached copy? Maybe? Who knows? Anyway, there we go. Interesting list nonetheless. I've got no problem with the list. But that's not what the article's about. So, yeah. I don't know how many you did actually get right. Was it 2? But, yeah. Like I say, I've got no problem with the list, but it's not accurate in terms of, summarising what's on the page. But I thought I'd just bring that up. So let's get into second question. So why do I have such an interest in trilogies here? So we're going to just explain what we've got here. So assume the role of an expert musicologist who specialises in music genres. What do you understand by the term trilogy when applied to a band or artist album? So I'm just making sure contextually it knows that that's what I want to talk about. I could use the term triptych, I suppose. It does sometimes work. Yeah, so what used to happen a lot when I was growing up is I've got 2 other brothers, both younger than me. We're both big, all 3 of us are big music fans. And often what would happen is we'd buy an album and then expand out. So we'd uncover these, sort of accidentally uncover trilogies. A good example is, one of us would go and buy, actually this is actually a real life example. So my youngest brother bought Killing Machine, which in the US I believe is called Hellbent for Leather by Judas Priest, and then proceeded to then buy British Steel, which is the album after it, and then I bought Stained Class. And as we then subsequently bought other albums like Sad Wings of Destiny or Rock and Roller or Sin After Sin, and also things like the live album, which helped us track down tracks, because that's the way we used to use a lot for tracking down other albums, was buying the live album and then finding the tracks we liked, and then tracking down the albums with those tracks. But as we just accidentally started out from the trilogy of those 3 albums of Stained Class, Killing Machine and British Steel, we noticed the commonality there, where the band had the shorter songs generally and that more metallic edge to the guitar. And over time I've sort of become more interested in that, and of course you've got trilogies which are deliberate and trilogies that just happen by accident. So we're moving on now. So again, I'm just effectively playing with it a bit and saying, well, are you familiar with the Berlin Trilogy by David Bowie? Please tell me about it. So now I think that one nice way of getting into a band is finding if you can lock onto the trilogies in the band, because they might have more than one, and then have a nice album listening session where you listen to the trilogy back to back and then see if you like the band and then go from there. And that means spending 2 to 3 hours doing that, but it's very rewarding. Okay, so now we're going to get it to list some other trilogies generally. And then we'll finally get on to the main question. And where we start to get it to do it around music genres, but the bands come from that music genre. You can do an interesting cross-band thing, which I tried this morning by slightly rewording this so that it said, come up with a trilogy from this genre, and then it picked different bands under that particular genre. Sometimes that's better to do with like five albums. So like one of those get you into a certain genre type lists. So here we're going to choose a music genre at random, and then can you list some trilogies by bands or artists in that chosen genre? So far, every time I've done this, it's picked metal as the genre, but we'll see what happens. And then we're going to try some variants on this, which I've experimented. Oh, so jazz this time. I've had jazz once before. This is cool. Miles Davis. First two I've definitely listened to. Last one, no. So these are ones I wouldn't mind trying out as the trilogy approach. But I have seen that list before. I think the first time I experimented with this, last night or the night before that happened. So we're going to ask it to choose a hybrid music genre. I expect things like rap rock, folk rock, so nothing too far down the genre tree and nothing too hybrid. So that's one thing to try, is hybrid genres. Yeah, rap rock. There we go. Probably Beastie Boys, Rage Against the Machine. Oh, Linkin Park this time. Interesting. I've not seen them on the list so far. Kid Rock, Limp Bizkit. Okay. And then, of course, you can go down these side branches if you think it's going to maybe expand the chain of thought a little bit and get these interesting causal crossroads. So choose a UK music genre. Another way you could reword this is choose a music genre that has roots in the UK, something like that, if you don't get the result you're intending. I've also tried to narrow this down in the past by saying choose a music genre from the 80s that had roots in the UK, or choose a UK music genre from the 80s. So again, playing around with these prompts, you get to feel what works best for what you're trying to achieve, and also where you might want to reuse the prompt in the future, what works best where you're sort of changing one or two aspects of the prompt. So the sort of how reusable a prompt is for different domains is something that's interesting to work on. Oasis, Blur, Pulp. It nearly always picks Britpop. I've seen it pick trip hop once. So another thing you can try is subgenres. Now you'll notice here I'm not specifically asking it to pick a subgenre, but by inference. So if I say choose a doom metal genre, it's going to go through and try and find a subgenre like epic doom metal, funeral doom, and we'll see how it does it this time. When I've done this a couple of times before with subgenres, it got quite explanatory about the process that it was doing to pick the genres. So we'll see whether it does the same here. Because it did this obviously process of looking up doom metal genres, and then oh, there we go. No, I didn't do it this time. So oh yes, good old death doom. Why not? Paranoid Lost, My Dying Bride, Anathema, Catatonia. I think it's rather telling. Out of this, is it going to stop on November's doom? Yeah. So 4 out of the 5, yeah, already been through these multiple times. Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride, Anathema, Catatonia. I discovered this band around about 97. Bought this album first and then just proceeded to buy these in order as they came out. These other bands, Paradise Lost, I think I bought like Gods of the Sun, which came out around the same time as Brave Murder Day. And then Backfield, so jumped back, bought Gothic, Shades of God and Icon. There used to be a really good record store down in Eastbourne when I worked down there on the south coast. I was working as a programmer for a value-added reseller with account systems, and I used to walk down there over lunchtime and spend my ill-gotten gains, my disposable income. And yeah, I can remember buying lots of this stuff back to get. Same with My Dying Bride. Oh look, there's Like Gods of the Sun. So yeah, it went back to, I think, Turn Loose the Swans and then The Angel in the Dark River. The other thing you might notice is with trilogies, they don't always have to be chronologically close. So with a lot of bands, some of the trilogies like span or jump albums, because it could be like a thematic reason. Anathema, what was my step-on album for them? Oh, was it Judgment? Which is quite a bit later than the other bands. So yeah, Judgment, and then Backfield into probably Eternity, and then back from there, along with the EPs that were collated on CDs. November's Doom, I don't think I've listened to any by them. Yeah, it's funny, my heart is definitely in Doom. Lots of different genres. So I was rather pleased one time it came up with some Candlemass as well. Let's go Doom dancing. So one other thing you can try that's interesting, although the code may not run if you try and run it in a correctly, and that's to ask a question like, can you write some Python code to do the following: choose a music genre at random and then write some trilogies by bands or artists in that chosen genre. It gives you some sample code for that, where what it's doing is obviously creating dictionaries and lists, but they're finite, and it'll have things like comments where it says, expand the dictionary here. So yeah, but it gives you an idea of how it does it, and when it you ask it to run it, it runs it, but it doesn't actually run the code it's shown you, because if it did, it probably would kick up an error where it's trying to look up a genre entry in the dictionary that's not actually there. So, but yeah, that's something you can try. So if you want to go down a bit of a sub genre. Sub. I don't know if there's a sub genre of Doom, of Death Doom. Is it Death Doom or Doom Death? I never know. Are there subgenres of thrash metal? I suppose there are, aren't there? Like black and thrash and thrash. Actually, we could do... Let's do... Let me just paste the same thing in here. Do a punk genre. So we get things like hardcore punk or pop punk or whatever. Random. Oi, we could get Street punk. I haven't tried punk yet, I don't think. Green Day. Blink 182. Pop punk is picked. Okay. Not quite as familiar with this era of pop punk. What if I did... I wonder if this would work. So, I don't know, it's probably going to fail here. So there are some interesting UK punk genres, like crust punk, and although there are connections with other bands outside of the UK that are considered to be early incarnations of crust. But see if we get things like anarcho punk or oh, there we go. Well, good guess. Oh, crass. Conflict. Here's some names I've not heard in a long while. Oh, Subhumans. I have all of these, I think. Or did. I never know with them, actually. I don't know if that's... Yeah, they used to release collections of EPs on vinyl as well, I think. I've never really listened to much flunks of Pink Indians, actually. And I can't remember whether there is a connection between Steve Ignorant of Crass and Flux of Pink Indians. Maybe that's because at some point he had his teepee in their back garden. I'm not sure. Anyway. So again, you can go down this route. There's some rude words there as well. Let me get away with that. It's all right. We're all adults here. Hopefully. This video is marked not for kids, so just scroll up, have a look. See where we went through this, just as a review. So started off by having that bit of a misfire, assuming the role of an expert musicologist. I'll also need to go through these, and I do give them appropriately thumbs up or thumbs down. Helps with the feedback, I think. Asking about the Berlin trilogy, other trilogies, and then this whole random genre thing. So there's plenty of musical recommendations there. I think with most of these I've listened through, actually. Yeah, some of these more than others. There we go. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in the next video.